Laura, I know that you have been seeking out resources about neuroscience and you continue to educate yourself about what we're learning about our brains. Why do you do that? Why are you a student of neuroscience?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm gonna give you a bunch of resources that I have tapped in that I hope that you can share with others. Um, and now I have a cat.
I see that.
I'm so sorry. So all of our work is evidence-based, and more and more is being revealed about our brains and
Yeah.
and the underworkings of our brains, and that's fascinating to me, especially because fundamentally what we do is we're looking at behavior, and a lot of that behavior, there are your brain is an organ, your thoughts and feelings are very different and can be, and the brain kind of navigates and sets you up for how you move through those thoughts and feelings. So, which then generates behavior, because then you're responding to your thoughts and feelings. So I feel like our brains have evolved over millions of years, and there's so much out there now, rich content that's out there, that why wouldn't we? Because it all fundamentally comes down to behavior.
Yes. 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 I love how you language that. This organ, this brain of ours has these networks of thoughts and feelings, and it all impacts the behaviors that we exhibit at work, at home, in all realms of our lives.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. You mentioned some resources.
Oh, well, so, Amanda Blake has a book, and I actually have it, called Your Body is Your Brain. I'll just hold it up here. She talks about really kind of what I was saying in terms of, how over these millions of years, our brain has adopted to the social and the environmental, the social and emotional environment, I guess I would say. Mm-hmm. And her data and research, and it's phenomenal. So there's Amanda Blake's Body is Your Brain.
I'm going to get that one.
Yeah, you definitely want to get that one, because ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to connect. We're trying to feel safe. The brain is navigating that. The brain is navigating safety. The brain is navigating connection. The brain is navigating respect. All of these nutrients, and she talks about that in her book, and I think that really speaks to our conversation today.
Excellent.
And I'll just throw in, as we're talking, I'll throw in more as we're talking.
Okay. Yeah. I see you're well prepared with the book prop at the ready. My guest today is Laura Berger. She is the founder and CEO of Berdeo Group, which is a global leadership development consultancy. She is a pioneer in evidence-based methodology that measures the before and after leadership competencies of her clients. Laura has spent more than 20 years coaching exceptional leaders into the C-suite and boardroom. Right. She enables and empowers leaders to take their best actions towards their loftiest pursuits. In October of 2020, Laura Berger became a trustee at the Committee for Economic Development and the Conference Board. She now has access to a unique and rare understanding of economic policy that enables her to impart to her clients more solid thinking that gives them a more secure footing on the global stage. Laura is such a highly respected business partner of mine, and I'm delighted to be having this chat.
Thank you.
So, as leaders, how do we use a basic understanding of how our brains work to be effective leaders? How do we put what we're learning into practice?
Well, I think fundamentally it goes back to those three core nutrients: the connection, the safety, and respect. Because as a leader, at the the foundation of that is trust. And so when you're moving into a position in which you want to, a leader is not a sole individual. I mean, a leader brings people along, a leader follows, and foundationally, you need to have trust through connection, respect, and safety. Because if you don't have those three tenets, how can you fundamentally have trust?
Yes.
So understanding, how the brain operates. I'll give you a great example of this. So let's just like take it back to our childhood. Take it back to and you as a parent. So when you see you're at a restaurant with your kids and you see another child that is going under, exploring, leaving the table, stepping away, maybe wanting to crawl under a booth, looking back, and you're looking at them, go, are they getting in trouble? Are they bothering that person? Oh, I don't want them to bother that person. And you're just, they're exploring, they're out there and they're exploring. And that secure base that you are providing for that child as they're looking back at you going, okay, mom's still there and I'm not getting yelled at yet,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Mom's still there and I can still see her in my sight, so I'm not too far away from my family, right? This secure base is that safety and that connection, but it's also allowing, your child to venture out and know that secure base is there. And now let's apply that to leadership.
Yeah.
And innovation and creativity. And, how can you as a leader provide a secure base for others, for your peers, so that they feel comfortable in testing boundaries, the child that, how far can I go? Bringing new ideas forward. In a way where, okay, failing fast. I mean, it's like, hey, I got your back, and so that secure base is fundamental. Now let's talk about the brain. When you're not in a secure base, you're in that fight, flight, appease mode.
Yes.
You're in your, the primitive part of your brain. Because let's go and trust. If you are trying to gain the trust of an animal, are you going to barge in and be like,
Yes.
Your amygdala is going to be reactive and, this doesn't feel safe. This doesn't, we're the same. As humans, we're the same. I'm not about to move into that, that playful connectedness, because in the primitive part of your brain, your cortisol levels are upregulating because of that interaction. And so that's going to prevent you from moving into your prefrontal cortex, which is where that connection and oxytocin levels are up. And you can, create that environment, that social environment to connect and to move into a space that's more.
And where our rational thought happens in the prefrontal cortex. So if we're a leader that does something intentionally or unintentionally that causes someone else's amygdala to go, oh, this feels like a threat, right? And then, of course, we know our brains treat psychological threats the same as physical threats. So it's telling us to fight, flight, or freeze, and we're not running from a tiger. So we don't need the blood to rush to our legs for running. We need instead to not be in that amygdala hijack and move, have the brain activity move, like you said, to the prefrontal cortex, right? So constantly be thinking as leaders, how do we make it safe? How do we make it okay? How can that person share that idea, say that vulnerable thing?
Yes. Well, and when you talk about how leaders can make it safe, so it's interesting because one of our clients, they're a publicly traded company, and one of their pillars, their culture pillars, is ease. We want, our customers to feel a sense of ease. We, want our employees to feel a sense of ease. Like it's all about ease. And it was interesting because the other thing about the brain is often people forget about what's going on in the body, because the body is going to send, the physical body is going to send reactions to the brain for the brain to respond. So when you talk about a sense of ease, what does ease feel like? Like in the body, what does ease feel like? And getting these clients to think, okay, you're saying you're all about ease, but how are you moving into your meetings? And they weren't moving into their meetings with ease. Just lift your shoulders up.
Yep.
How's that make you feel?
Not ease.
Not
tension.
Tension. And this is called proprioception and interception is what it is. And so it's getting in tune with your body. And Amanda Blake talks about this as well, of being able to be more aware of your sensations, because your sensations are ultimately going to send signals to your brain. That rapid heartbeat, we're a company of ease. We gotta go into this meeting.
All wound up. Yeah.
All wound up. And then now let's talk about thoughts and feelings. We're a company of ease. How do you think you're really feeling when you're moving into a conversation with someone? That doesn't feel psychologically safe whatsoever if you're intense like this and your heartbeat's going a mile a minute, and what you're communicating may not, come across the way that you intend it to come across with ease.
Yes.
So that's safety. So how can a leader, create safety? Well, it's getting in tune with their physical body. What is going on in your body in the moment? I was on a call with a chief technology officer, and everything was just going crazy with the board expectations and a system that they were implementing. And I said, talk to me about, like what this feels like for you. And when he couldn't really connect to his body, because it's hard for people to connect, I said, well, describe it as a song. Like, what song comes to mind? And he rattled off, it was like a Toad the Wet Sprocket song or something, and I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, it's just like this up and down and intense and intense and intense. And then I said, well, how would you want it to feel? Like, what song comes to mind? And he shared a song that he would sing to his son when to create calm for him.
Right.
And it happened to be a Journey song, I believe. And he's
okay.
like, that just like puts me at ease and in this calm. And so what is happening there is you are accessing your parasympathetic nerve, which is, responsible for that feelings that we have. And then you have the sympathetic nerve, which is, where, you experience anxiety. And so shifting in your body so that you can actually access that parasympathetic nerve, that sense of calm, can come from getting someone to think about what music creates that calmness for them. Yeah. And then they can go into how it feels in the body. So I understand that some leaders have a real hard time talking about, well, I don't know how it feels in the body. It just feels irritating, or it feels, I don't know. And so if you can shift it to something else, it can really help them navigate that.
You are so good at helping others tune in to what's going on with them and giving them various access points, like you were just talking about and sharing that example with your client, right? That tuning into our bodies, if we can feel what's going on physically, or if we can describe it with a song or a poem or a memory or something to help us access how we're feeling, that helps us understand, if I'm following the logic here, what's going on in our brains, right? Like what are the thought and emotion patterns that we're tapping into in that moment that are probably going to inform what our next behaviors are going to be.
Yes. Well, and so what you're also talking about is the neocortex is responsible for the scripts that we create in our minds. So let's say, for example, you have a colleague of yours, and every time you have an interaction with them, this is, oh gosh, it's just terrible. It's just, stressful, and, they don't listen. They're always cutting me off. They're interrupting me. And so what happens is that script has been developed in your neocortex. And so as you're moving into that conversation, you can choose to go into it with, oh, what's this person going to do today again? Oh, they're going to cut me off here. Or they're going to, make me feel this small, or whatever it is. Or you can say, okay, what's going on in my body? How can I move into this conversation from a place of calm, from a place of ease?
Yes.
And shift the script.
Ooh, shift the script.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, and we have to have the awareness first in order to shift the script. Otherwise, we're going to go in with our automatic reactions, which might be from an amygdala hijack, fight, flight, or freeze place. Yeah. Okay. So shifting the script. Yeah. I've seen some videos out recently about neuroscience that we can actually change these patterns in our minds. Tell us more about how that works.
Sure. So there's a well, the first one that comes to mind is words. Words are powerful. And when you think about a word, there's meaning attached to that word. So for example, context, it's with words. That's what it means. That's what context means. And, even if you don't know the actual meaning of that word, you attach a meaning to that word.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you are shifting the pattern or the script of that individual that you can't seem to have a good conversation with, words matter.
Yeah.
Words matter incredibly. So when you think about the word terrorist, just think about the word terrorist, right? And then what thoughts and feelings does that bring forward?
Terror. Out of control, instability, unknowns. I just want to try to protect people, my family.
And what do you think would be going on in your brain right now? Protect, terror.
Yeah. Freak out. Like this is, it's fight. Some of it is flight too. Like, right. I just want to run away. I don't want to be in any circumstances where my family could be in harm's way.
And now what about if I said freedom fighter?
Yeah. Pride, freedom, safety, security, banding together.
Yeah. And what's going on in your brain right there? You're not in the hijack mode. You're not in the, you're in the, freedom and, banding together.
I feel like I must be coming into the neocortex where there's connection and there's
right. And
hope and optimism.
And there's hope and optimism. And so when you want to change that script, and you're in communication and dialogue with another leader, words are so powerful.
Yes.
So if for example, I was on a call this morning with a leader who was frustrated with the CEO and telling me that she was feeling very defeated by the conversations that she was having with the CEO. And I'm like, well, talk to me about the conversations that you're having. And she started sharing very much defeatist, dialogue of
language.
Well, I'll do what you want me to do or whatever, kind of discounting it like, yeah, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it unwillingly. And so that's how she's choosing to move through that dialogue. And then I said, well, think about what would great look like for you and for the CEO? What would that look like?
Yeah.
How would you describe that? What are the words that you would be using? The dialogue that you would bring forward? And she said, and granted, this was prefaced in a prior conversation. She's like, how can we combine the best of our thinking to solve this?
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
How can we combine the best of our thinking to solve this? There's nothing defeatist in that statement.
Yeah. Very forward focused.
So that is shifting the script. It's shifting the script for her. It's, shifting the dialogue in her conversation and interaction with the CEO so that they can actually look at the future and not feel defeated and combine their valued thoughts.
This is great, Laura, because it's easy to get into the circumstances where, well, that was just a really unmotivating conversation with my boss, right? I mean, anybody who just experienced that conversation would think the same thing. And here we're saying, bring the awareness to that defeated feeling. And then you've got the power to shift the script. And you can say, okay, that's not what I want. What do I want? Right? How do I want to have influence? I mean, sometimes it sounds silly, but talking about opportunities instead of challenges, talking about what we can do rather than what we can't do. And that what would great look like? What would be ideal? What do we aspire to? Can bring our thoughts and emotions to a different place, which then brings about different behavior. Yeah.
And increases oxytocin levels and dopamine of like, ooh, this is motivating. This is exciting. There's anticipation. Like a lot of dopamine is really associated having great impact in that anticipatory process, like leading up to. So when now you're in this dialogue leading up to, your dopamine levels are ticking up. And that's like, ooh, this is a good space for us. Yes. So that defeat, when you're defeated, lack of motivation, they're like, well, your dopamine levels have to be totally tanked.
Yeah. So Laura, talking about oxytocin and dopamine, is this a good place to loop back to the core nutrient of connection?
Yes, it absolutely is. So it's the four are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Those are the four
chemicals from the main chemicals from the brain.
Yeah. So I'm always saying, get your healthy dose of these things.
An acronym.
It's an acronym.
We love a good acronym.
We love a good acronym. So dopamine fuels exploration and helps you to move into that prefrontal cortex. And it's like it fuels exploration, curiosity, and a simple way to boost dopamine is through expressing appreciation. Like it's so simple, to do that. And oxytocin, you may or may not do this, but hang it, give somebody a hug. That's associated with that nurturing and bonding, and it reduces anxiety. And so oxytocin can also, if you're not feeling connected and you're, wanting to create higher levels of oxytocin, pet your dog or your cat. I mean, that increases your oxytocin levels. Serotonin it manages your mood. The production of serotonin can actually create more of a positive mood. And so when those levels are optimal, that's obviously affecting your thoughts and feelings as well. So if you're in a good mood, how you're going to behave is in a way that is more creating connection versus if you're in a bad mood. And simply expressing like things that you are grateful for, like things that you have an appreciation for others, gratitude practices, things such as that. And then endorphins, exercise is excellent for increasing your endorphins, because what endorphins do is they help you, they help you, they're good coping strategies. Right. So when you have those endorphins, they mitigate fear, and they provide a good coping. They help with coping strategies. So exercise. Think about when you're really upset and then you go for a run and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, this doesn't feel so bad anymore, because now you've decreased the fear. You've come up with something that's probably more reasonable in order to have that difficult conversation that you were going to have, because you increased your endorphins.
It sounds like it could be perspective setting.
Yes.
Okay. I love that. So right now, Laura, everybody is talking about how we don't feel as connected. There's threats to connection because we're working in remote or hybrid situations. In non-essential industries, we're not necessarily in the office together every day. And you're telling us find ways to release these connection chemicals in our brains. And then we naturally feel more connected. And then as a result, we'll take actions to be more connected with others. I'm imagining then we might reach out, or we might say more in that meeting, or we might acknowledge someone's contributions to the project in the last week.
Yes.
Love it. Yeah. And ways to access this. You talked about hug, pet your dog, snuggle your child, practice gratitude.
Exercise.
Yeah. I often think about music. I don't employ this one enough, but how different songs can evoke different moods. You shared this with your example with the client, that songs were actually helping him access what feelings he had and what feelings he wanted. Play a good song that can better my mood.
It absolutely can. And you don't even really need to play it. You need to just think about it. Just think of, like, because sometimes we're going a mile a minute and we're back-to-back meetings and you're about to get on a call where you're sitting there going, oh gosh, I got to have this, I got to give feedback to a direct report that is just not like lifting their weight in your opinion. Okay. So maybe you need to kind of think about that song and like, okay. And so you don't even need to hear it. You just need to have that experience of it, of like, oh yeah, I love that song.
Yes. Oh, I thought of this earlier in the conversation about shifting the script, actually changing our minds about something. And you just brought it back to mind for me. Every time we just think about the song or play that through our heads or say, this is my intention, or envision what we want to have happen. Every time we do that, it's firing those neurons in our brain in a new way. And it's starting to create that path, which I think is so interesting, because sometimes we say, okay, to gain mastery or to change something, like you have to do it and do it and do it and do it and do it. Now, Laura, what if I don't get opportunities every day to do it, whatever it is?
Yes.
But what we're learning about the brain now is that I can just think about it, envision it, practice it in my head, visualize. And that actually is changing the pattern in my brain.
It totally is. And that actually, so I'm reading a book right now called Behave. Right here.
Another resource at the ready. Behave is by Robert
Sapolsky. And he talks about, the like words unconsciously shift your thoughts and feelings. Mm-hmm. So when you hear a word, it's not necessarily practicing a word. It's hearing a word, and it unconsciously will shift a thought and feeling for yourself. So the example that he gave was, it was called the prisoner's game. It was an economic game of some sort.
Okay.
And he said that when they named the game the Wall Street game, people were less cooperative. Just by the name. The Wall Street game. Okay. I see that. Then when they named the game Community Game.
Oh, yeah.
People were more cooperative.
Yeah.
Because
I'm more interested in playing that game.
Right?
I haven't even heard the rules of the game.
You don't even know.
Or the objective.
The behind the game was, let's look at how people can be cooperative versus competitive. Like that's ultimately what it was looking at.
Yeah.
And so when you say, all of these neurons are, just they're changing in the moment based on a word.
Yes.
And that's unconscious. Like they didn't even know that. They were just in this study and they noticed behaviorally when they said community game versus Wall Street game, the brain made an association with Wall Street, competitive, stocks, less cooperative, more competitive, more, community. Oh, community. And then they did another study where they just rattled off words of like hope and strive and, compassion, and just rattling them off. Like there was no meaning behind it versus, more negatively, tuned words. Yeah. And their whole behavior shifted.
So interesting.
I mean, that to me is fascinating.
Yeah. I worked with a leader recently talking about the power of what you name something. The titles of our meetings.
Yes.
We have the most boring, mundane titles for meetings. Who wants to go to these meetings? And she and I talked about, like, there were strategy sessions. And when talking about what she wanted to accomplish in those strategy sessions, she wanted the team to come together and talk about what great looks like.
Yeah.
So now the title of those meetings are, what does great look like, right? Like, how do we create great? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd rather show up and participate in that meeting.
Yes.
Okay, well, I feel like we can't wrap until we talk about the third core nutrient you mentioned earlier, respect.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are we learning about the brain that helps us demonstrate, create respect in our relationships?
Yeah. Well, I think respect cannot be present without connection and trust. Mm-hmm. And so back to just looking at the innards of the brain itself, if you're in a place where you're not trusting, if you're in the primitive part of your brain where you're either appeasing, as that client was doing, I feel defeated, I really, am not trusting what she's saying to me, and doesn't feel respected, it's very hard to then respect someone else. So think about when you're not feeling respected, because you're feeling disconnected and you're feeling as if there's been a breakdown in trust of, wow, you're not trusting the decisions that I'm making. How, like, respect gets eroded. Any respect for the person that you had begins to erode over time. And again, once again, when you're in that, primitive part of your brain, and your heart's probably racing a little bit faster. It's your sympathetic nerve that's being activated. It's creating anxiety. There's no sense of calm whatsoever. You're not going to be able to access your prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
Where that connection and that oxytocin and that respect resides there.
Respect and trust.
Respect resides there. It does not reside in the primitive part of your brain.
In the fear-based portion. Laura, you have shared with us so many great concepts and practical ways to access them. I mean, first, talking about safety, right? How do you as leaders create a safe space for people to show up vulnerably and with their innovative ideas? Talked about how ultimately we can shift the script, but first we have to be aware. And tuning into our bodies can be a great way to access that. So we can notice how we're thinking and feeling. Yeah. Because that's going to inform our behavior. And we have to be aware in order to shift. Words matter. That was powerful, Laura. Thinking about how we're speaking to ourselves, how we're speaking to others, just even the words that we're using when we think about it. And it runs through our head. Release chemicals like dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. And there's ways that we can release those chemicals in ourselves. Yeah. And then that has us showing up ready to connect with others. And I love this when it's not generated within ourselves, we're not going to be able to generate it with others. Yeah. So many great concepts and practical access points that you gave us today, Laura. Thank you for your time. It was great. I could talk to you about this all day. And thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This was lots of fun. And you're right, we could go on and on and on.
And we will put all the links to the resources that Laura mentioned in the show notes.
Yeah.
So that you can check it out further. Thanks for listening.